All right, so we're going to talk about Windows PC backup strategies and tools for backup here. And I think most of you know me, but real quickly, I'm a member of the volunteer group here, Senior Center Tech Connect. I was a marketing guy in the high performance technical computing arena in my real life. As I said earlier, I'm mostly a Mac guy, but I can boot Windows if I must. And I did grow up with computers from the mid 60s, believe it or not, growing up in Wyoming, in a small town in Wyoming. We had a computer at our high school, which is just unbelievable. All right. I always like to qualify the presentation. This presentation's for you if you have valuable stuff on your computer, and who doesn't? Or you should be backing stuff up, but I've been busy and I can't get around to it, or whatever. Or you just curious about how you might save your stuff. So you can see here, I make good use of AI for generating these images. Generally, I'll try to do an attribution here for the images as we go along. So we're going to talk about why backup matters, what is a backup, and then we're going to look at different ways to back up your Windows PC, different options. I always like to break this down into two chunks. One is the not particularly useful but mildly entertaining section. In other words, you can sleep through this if you want, but don't sleep through this section, the informative and hopefully useful section. I always say, hey, we're going to have a quiz at the end, so pay attention in this section. All right, first of all, let's look at why backup. Well, accidents, hardware failure, or even theft of your computer can happen at any time. You could lose your photos, documents, all of your data. So there's a general rule of thumb, and of course, we're going to talk more about this. Keep at least two copies, one on your PC, one elsewhere. And the reason for that is obvious. If you have an external drive connected to your computer and your house burns down, they're both going to go. So you want to have something elsewhere. So what is it you want to preserve? Well, this is a little, what do they call this? I can't remember. It's a cloud, a word cloud, right? Photos is probably one of the most important things most of us like to back up. We have photos for years and years of the kids growing up and all that sort of thing, and we don't want to lose them. Genealogy, of course. A lot of us are genealogists here. School records, tax return, insurance policies, and on and on and on. So if you don't get anything else from this presentation, pick a backup solution and use it. Okay, so everybody promised they're going to do that. And if you don't, we're going to come hunt you down here. So what's a backup? Let's talk about the technical aspects of what is a backup. First of all, it's a copy of things that are important to you that are on your computer or your entire computer. In other words, if you do a backup of your entire computer, you'll be able to restore it should something happen. And importantly, it doesn't change once you make that backup. And if you take a backup every week, say, you should be able to go back 5 weeks and restore a file from that period. So that's important. Generally, you save it somewhere else so you don't lose it if things go wrong. I have seen, for example, people back up their computer to the hard drive in their computer. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense because you're protecting yourself against the hard drive failure. So if something bad happens, you can restore from the backup and keep going. I should add to this, you also may have an occasion to restore, for example, a file or folder from the past that you inadvertently deleted, or you're writing a book and you made a whole bunch of changes that don't make sense and you want to go back to a version from, hang on, Michael, I'll get right to you. A version from 4 or 5 weeks ago, you should be able to go to a backup and restore that version. Yes, Michael.
Um, I don't. I just want to clarify something. In Windows terminology, when you do a backup, in order to recover that, you need the same software. There's a differentiation between backing up and using software to do that and copying files.
Ah, good point. We're going to talk about that actually.
Okay, I just
That's
want
an
to make
excellent
sure.
point. Yeah, we're going to talk about all the software options that are available, but your point is well taken. If Unless we're talking about just copying, like drag and drop copying, if you're using a backup program, you will almost assuredly need that same program to do the restore. Is that what your point is?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
thanks. Good point. Um, yeah, and we're going to talk a lot more about that, obviously. So you can think of it as insurance policy for data. And the reason I use the word insurance policy is we all generally buy insurance. We'd rather not. And we think we're pouring our money down the drain until we need it. And that's exactly the case here. You may be doing backups continuously for years and not need them, but when you need them, you really need it. So it's an insurance policy. So we're going to look at the different types of backup. The first one we're going to look at is called a full backup, and this is copying everything from your computer. It might be your whole system, including the operating system and all of your files. And that kind of backup you can restore to another computer and make it look just like your old computer, which is this is the ultimate backup is the whole system and all your files. Or it might just be all your files. And in this particular case, I think I mentioned that here is you may have to reload the operating system if your whole computer dies. But then you have all of your files saved in the backup. And you can see here the amount of data is all of the data. So a full backup generally certainly takes the most time and space. Depending on how much data you have on your computer, it can take upwards of an hour, for example, to take a full backup. And really, when we use a full backup, we generally use it as a foundation for later backups. In other words, it's the foundation for beginning a restore, and then the smaller backups will bring you up to date. Speaking of which, there's a thing called an incremental backup. And you can see here, what we're talking about here is just changing uh, what's just saving what's changed since the last backup. And in this example, I made a few changes on day one, day two, day three. And these incremental backups that ran are just saving what's changed since the last backup. And the advantage here is it's fast and it takes very little space. The disadvantage is you may have to restore your full backup and then restore every incremental to bring you up to your current state if you, depending on the backup software you're using. And there's a thing called a differential backup, which is sort of an aggregate between the two. And you can see here, you changed everything since the last full backup. And the advantage here is you're not making a full backup every day, but you can restore just the full and then the latest backup. In this particular case, day three has all of the changes from day one, day two, and day three. Um, Most backup software will either take this kind of backup or make it look like it's this kind of backup. So this is really the one that you generally use, depending on your backup software. You'll end up with a full restore and then the last differential backup. So let's look at the options that are available here. Um, First of all, there's Windows, what I call Windows built-in options. And there's three of those that we're going to talk about. One is called File History. The other is Backup and Restore from Windows 7. and the new Windows backup, which is based on OneDrive. There's a lot of chats here. Do we have a lot of questions? Hang on a second. Let me see what we got here. Thank you, Connie. It was a pretty view. Will a full backup include emails? We're going to talk more about that, Sherry. In general, email is cloud-based, and a full backup, unless you're using folders on your device, your emails will be retained in the cloud. Oh, and Daryl answered that. Does that include Outlook email? Yes, that's Microsoft email. Sherry, you're using folders on your laptop? In that case, yes, you will want to back those up because those will not be synchronized in the cloud. All right, cool. Great. Thanks for asking questions right along here. I'll try to keep up with it so I can. Then we're going to look at third-party backup tools, and we're going to look at the top 5 or 6 that ChatGPT told me we should look at. So we'll go through some of those. And then there's the manual drag and drop. And I think, Michael, this is what you called a copy. And technically, yes, it is a copy. And we're going to talk about that. Doing nothing is not an option. Okay. Oh, shoot. By the way, I have an updated handout. Let me put it in the chat right now. And I added a couple of slides from what was sent out, what Daryl sent out last Saturday. So there you go. The Windows backup options handout is in the chat. First of all, let's look at Windows file history. Windows file history has been around for a long time. It generally just backs up files, and you can back up to pretty much anything, a network drive or an external drive. The advantages are that it can be scheduled. You can set up a schedule. You can do hourly backups or daily or weekly, and it's in the settings for that. And it's pretty simple to restore files, not only files that you may have deleted or that you may have had a catastrophe, but you can also go back to older versions. We were talking that a moment ago. If I have a version of a file of my book from 5 weeks ago, I can actually sift through all of the incrementals that have been taken since then and go back to the 5th week, for example, and restore it. And it's a pretty cool little interface to do that. It's almost as cool as a Mac, believe it or not. And I say it's good for everyday file protection because it's automated. You don't have to think about it. You just plug your drive in and let it run. So in that sense, I think it's a good backup option. The disadvantage is that it doesn't do full backup. In other words, it can't back up the system or the apps you have on your computer. So if you do have a catastrophic failure, you'll need to reload the operating system, reinstall your apps, and then restore from your file history drive. It's not cloud-based, which may or may not be an advantage, a disadvantage. And I guess it's not ideal for full PC recovery. We talked that. Windows 11, they did away with the file encryption BitLocker that was available on Windows 10. And you do have it on Windows 11 Pro, but not on Windows 11 Home. And we're going to talk a little bit more about encryption. I believe it's important to encrypt your external drive should someone try to grab it or somehow steal it. But without BitLocker, it's a little more tough to do. So that's one of the disadvantages of that. I don't know, Michael, you got any additions for Windows file history?
Yeah, the biggest problem I find with it, if your disk is attached to your computer and you have a massive power outage or surge, it could destroy the file history as well.
Oh, goodness. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about leaving your disk continuously attached to your computer here in a moment.
Right. I have one continuously attached, but I also have one that I only attach when I do data transfers.
Perfect. We're going to talk about that. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right. There's also Windows built-in backup and restore from Windows 7, believe it or not. And actually, this is quite a good solution in the sense that it can create full system images. In other words, it can back up your entire uh, system to an external drive. And it does support scheduling and automation, so you can leave your disk plugged in and have it automatically do backups. Um, the Believe it or not, I mean, it says good for advanced users or legacy systems. The interface is a little wonky since it's from Windows 7. You have to get into the control panel. But once you get it set up, it's oh, good. I said that. It's an old style interface, a little harder. I'll say harder to get to. It's not harder to use, it's harder to get to. It's also not cloud-based, which may or may not be an advantage. Microsoft doesn't support it anymore, but it's still available on Windows 11. Oh, I meant to mention, I'm running a version of Windows 11 that does not support file history. So when Microsoft is not supporting file history anymore either. So you have to take that into consideration. Most Windows 11s have file history, but mine doesn't. I've got I don't know, some special thing here. You also can encrypt the external drive, just as with file history, the same issue. Did I miss anything there, Michael?
The one thing that it's great for is before you install new software, especially if you're running Home Edition, not Pro Edition. Um, um, so you do a restore, you do a backup and restore prior to again installing that software. On Windows 11, you have what's called Sandbox, so you can check out uh, apps and install them in Sandbox to make sure that they don't disrupt your computer. But I use this all the time. I use this all the time on Windows 10 when I was installing new programs.
Ah, okay. Yeah, because then if it went wonky and erased your drive or something, you would be able to restore from the backup,
Well,
right?
more importantly from than that is a lot of people install software from non-reputable sites, and that software can be carrying viruses or malware with it. And that's a real important thing to avoid is installing from, again, unsupported sites.
Ah,
And that's when I used it. In other words, if it was from a third party, even though it looked reputable, I would always do what is called exactly Windows 7 backup.
cool. Okay, good point. I like that. All right. So then there's also what's now known as Windows Backup with Windows 11, and it's based on Microsoft OneDrive. And it's important, and we're going to hammer this. It syncs your files. It's not exactly a backup. And we're going to talk more about that in a minute. The advantages are it's really simple. It's automatic. It's turned on by default. If you install a brand new version of Windows 11, it syncs a lot of things like your settings and your apps and that sort of thing. And as we mentioned, it's based on OneDrive Cloud. The disadvantage is it's not really a backup. In other words, for example, if you delete a file, it's gone. As being in the recycle bin notwithstanding, if you delete it, you can't go to some date in the past and restore the file as it was in that date in the past. In that sense, it's not really a backup. It's a synchronization, file synchronization service. It also requires that you be connected to the internet, and it takes OneDrive space, and we're going to talk more about that as well. There's no support for external drives, so you can't just plug a drive in and hope that you're getting a local backup to that external drive. You also don't have full system image capability. Actually, I think you have some limited system image capability. The big disadvantage that I see for this is it moves your home folders, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. It takes, yeah, we're going to talk more about that in a minute. So the nice thing about Windows 11 OneDrive backup is that it comes with the system. All you need is your Microsoft account and perhaps some monthly cash. And it's turned on by default, and it's real time. So it's saving stuff immediately after you make the changes to it. We don't need to really go over this. This is in the handout.
Can we talk a little bit about backup, about that backup?
We're going to talk more about it here in a second. I think we're going to talk a lot about OneDrive. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, give me a few more slides here, and if we don't hit on it.
Okay.
Okay, great. Because we could have a whole session on OneDrive. In fact, it's one of the things I've been pondering. And what I mentioned here is not a backup, it syncs files. Yeah, and it complicates your folder locations. And we're going to talk about that here in a minute. And the third option is third-party apps. And these are apps that are commercially available. They're designed specifically for backup. They go from easy to, let's say, comprehensive. Some are free, some have limited functionality unless you purchase, give them some more money. They may include cloud synchronization and backup as part of the product, which is really nice because you can do both external drive connected to your computer as well as real-time cloud synchronization. And many name brand, when I say name brand, I'm thinking like Seagate or Western Digital. If you buy a Seagate drive from Amazon or Best Buy, it comes with some software that supports backup and restore. And it's actually not bad stuff. I downloaded the Seagate tools for backup, excuse me. And they were pretty easy to use and seemed to work pretty well. So, and generally they support encrypted external drives, which I think is important. Microsoft obviously doesn't think this is important, but I think it is. So I asked ChatGPT just to tell me the top 5 third-party apps, and it went out and did some research, and probably these are sorted by market share, although I don't know that for sure. And you can see it has some little tips that it came up with about each of these drives. I downloaded a couple of these and played with them, and I think they're probably one of the best solutions is to use one of these third-party apps because they have everything you need. They don't require OneDrive space, although they might use it. And you can also do encrypted external drives. This was some of the features that it came up with. And I think the important thing was external drives are encryptable. It can be encrypted. And you can see you can use OneDrive, Google, Dropbox, right? So you can choose your own cloud service, which is also, I think, a benefit. All right, and then there's also manual drag and drop. And I can't look at who all's here right now, but I know some folks that have done this. Basically, you open File Explorer, and the easiest way for me is to open 2 windows: the external drive on the left and or on the right, and your documents folder on the left, and just copy the files to the external drive. And I consider this a last resort. First of all, it's really difficult to organize. You could end up with let's say 10 different external drives with 10 different copies, um, and you don't know which one is the latest one, and it's hard to sort through them. And also, it's not automatic. And that's the biggest thing is you really need something that's automatic and on schedule, and you don't need to think about it. It just gets done. So this is a last resort. It's better than nothing, but not a whole lot better than nothing. All right, so let's look at backup strategies. I promise you, Mike, somewhere along here, we're going to talk about OneDrive. So what to back up? And in this case, it depends on your objective. And we've talked about let's say, for example, you're migrating from one PC to another. In that case, you want a full system backup, all your apps, all your settings, obviously all your folders and files. If you're just protecting your work, then you may just select different folders. At a minimum, I would suggest your working folders, what we call working folders, your desktop, your documents, and your pictures folders. And some of you may be familiar with this image that we have here. In the Bobsky user on my PC, there are a bunch of fixed folders. And of those, I may want to back up desktop documents and pictures. Generally, you don't need to back up downloads because the way you arrived at the files in the downloads folder was to download them. You could download them again. You may want movies and music, for example. All right, when do we back up? Well, again, it depends on your level of activity and the backup method. Anywhere from immediately, in case of cloud-based backup and synchronization, to daily or weekly or monthly. So the important thing is to set a schedule, hopefully an automated schedule, and stick with it. Did somebody have a question there? Okay.
I think we're all retired.
All right. And again, preferably it's automated. Preferably it's automated. And where to store the backups. And there's this thing that's kind of well known about called a 3-2-1 policy. And the idea is to keep 3 copies of your data, your working files, which are on your computer, and 2 backups. And then those 2 backups are stored on different types of media and different locations. For example, one's on an external drive and one is in the cloud. And then you keep 1 copy off-site. I know a couple that every month they take their external drive and take it to their safe deposit box and swap it out with the one that's stored there. And that's the ultimate, is to store that drive in a safe deposit box. But that protects you for a lot of different things. Obviously, a catastrophe that destroys your computer and your local external drive, you're protected from that. You're also protected by putting what we call an air gap between your computer and the backup drive. There are scammers that do a thing called ransomware, where they'll scramble your files and folders and not give you the password unless you send them some money. And if they get on your system, they could, in fact, scramble your backup drive as well. So that's why it's important to have a copy that's not connected to your computer and preferably in a different physical location. When it comes to external media, the best is what we call moving head hard drive, or HDD. This is old technology, right? This little guy over here. It's mechanical, it's got a spinning disk, but it retains data better than even solid state drives. It's good for 5 to 7 years of sitting around. So that's a good thing. Whereas an SSD may be 2, 3, or 4 years before it starts getting corrupted. The worst, believe it or not, is USB sticks. They're cheap, they're unreliable, and they have a very limited lifespan. They're better than nothing, but they are the poorest of the choices here. So if you're going to go out and buy a drive for your external backups, get an HDD. And the other advantage of the HDD is it's less expensive than a solid state drive. So it's the best of both worlds. It's the best backup and it's the least expensive. Oh yeah, USB sticks are better than nothing. And again, your external drive should be encrypted if possible. It's always possible. It's just a matter of the amount of effort that you want to go through to do it. So, for example, I looked 2 or 3 days ago. This is a 1 terabyte Seagate external hard drive HDD, and if you need to figure out what size external drive to get, and generally look for something that's about 2 to 3 times the size of your computer storage. And that's determined by going into your system storage settings and looking at the storage. For example, if you have a 512 gigabyte hard drive in your computer, get a 1 or 2 terabyte backup drive. The reason for this is those incremental saves. For example, I'm doing incremental saves on my Mac here. We're not talking about Mac backup, but it's very similar. And I can go back to October of 2023, I think, on my 2 terabyte backup drive. So I can look all the way back in time at each of those incrementals till all the way back to 2023. And speed is not an issue. And you might argue with me about that, but in the day-to-day backup, those backups take place in the background. So you don't need to pay a bunch extra for an SSD or a 10,000 RPM high-speed hard drive. Just get a nice, inexpensive HDD and plug it in and let it run in the background. And I mentioned this earlier. For example, Seagate has software that comes with it. So when it comes time to recover, again, it depends on the backup method. And most of these approaches, all of the Microsoft internal ones, as well as the third-party ones, allow what I'm going to call an easy restore. In other words, there's a dialog that comes up and it says, here are all the files on the backup drive in the hierarchy that they are on your computer. Just navigate to the file you want to, or folder you want to restore, and click restore, and it will restore it. If your whole computer is destroyed or the hard drive dies, you'll need to restore from a full backup, or you'll need to start from scratch with new Windows OS and then restore from them. Now, and to Sherry's question earlier, cloud-based items will sync automatically. So once you bring up a new computer and you log in with your respective account, in this case, a Microsoft account or a Dropbox account, it will begin syncing with the cloud automatically. So that it takes place automatically. I promise you, Michael, somewhere here we're going to talk about OneDrive. So here's my recommendation. First of all, not only a backup, but put your critical files and folders in a cloud service. I used Dropbox for years. It's really easy to use. It's a great cloud service, and in fact it's the easiest one to use. Even rivals iCloud, for example. But OneDrive is fine. But I'm recommending do not use the Windows 11 backup OneDrive. And we're going to talk more about that, but I don't recommend using that. It's confusing. It's not a backup. And you can end up ultimately losing your files if situation is right. So I occasionally take a full backup to an external drive. And it doesn't matter how you do that. Probably file history is not applicable here. And then take that drive offsite. So when I say occasionally, weekly or monthly, for example, depends on your level of activity, obviously. And then very frequently take incremental backup to an external drive. And again, the same software, you want to use the same software in most cases to do all of these backups. And I do, well, here, here's what Bobsky does. I have 2 external backup drives sitting on my desk, and they're continually attached to my desktop. They are encrypted. They ping pong back and forth. They alternate backups. And the reason I do that is I was using, here we go. I don't know if you can see this. This is a little 2 terabyte Western Digital HDD. And this one is about 5 years old, and it just went kaput. And I wasn't able to read the data on it anymore. So when I have 2 backups, I always have one that's working. And if one of them goes wonky, I can replace it while the other one's still being used. I do hourly cumulative backups to these drives. In this particular case, because I'm on a Mac, I'm using the Mac software, but still, it's essentially cumulative backups, and it alternates between them. I also put all my important documents and photos in the cloud. And as I mentioned, I used to use Dropbox. Now I'm using a combination of Dropbox and iCloud, but that could certainly be OneDrive. And then I occasionally take full backups offsite. As a matter of fact, I hadn't planned on this, but this is a full backup right here in a 3.5-inch, 2 terabyte hard drive. And it's wrapped in plastic because I'm going to take it to my daughter's house so she can hold on to it until the next go around. Oh, you know what? The OneDrive talk is in the appendix, but we need to go to it. So to wrap up here, your computer isn't going to back itself up. I promise you, it's not, even if you think it's going to. And it will break someday, or you will delete a file you wish you could get back, or something bad will happen. So if you don't do backups, you are going to lose everything. You're going to lose all your genealogy work. You're going to lose all your photos from 1994. So if you don't get anything else from this presentation, pick a backup solution and use it. And these are the options that we've talked about. Doing nothing is not an option. All right, so that's kind of the crux of it. Let me see. Oh, so this is kind of again, backups, the software you choose and the strategy you use is a personal choice. I mean, you can back up once a month and leave the drives laying on your desk if you want. But I would recommend this. File history or third party, and I would recommend third party ahead of file history even, is easy and automatic. That's probably the preferred solution, depending on your level of activity. The full system image, the Windows 7 backup software is really made for that, and it does a great job of backing up. For cloud safety, since we're talking about Microsoft here, OneDrive is the preferred cloud service. And I'm saying not as a backup, but as a file synchronization. And really the most reliable thing is to use a third-party app. These people design these applications for exactly this purpose. So, I think a third-party solution is probably overall the best. I can't recommend one of those amongst them. And Michael, you may have some thoughts on third party, or anybody have thoughts on third party backups, but
Bobsky,
yeah.
you didn't mention tools like Carbonite.
Yeah, well, Carbonite I put under the third party.
Oh, okay. But it's
categorization, yeah.
interesting that ChatGPT didn't.
I know. I was thinking about that because I know some folks that use Carbonite, and Carbonite will do, I think it will do both. It will do a local external drive as well as cloud-based, although it's known for cloud-based, right? Backups. I think that's the case. I should probably add that to the third-party list. And as always, you can come see us. So let's talk about Windows 11 backup. And the thing about Windows 11 backup that's kind of sneaky by Microsoft is, first of all, you can't install Windows 11 anymore without logging into a Microsoft account. You can, but come see me if you really want to do that. It's difficult. And once you've logged into your Microsoft account, it sets up OneDrive automatically. You have to go out of your way to turn it off. So if you turn on Windows 11 backup, it moves your documents, desktop, and picture folder into the OneDrive folder. So it changes where your folders are on your hard drive. Now, it also sneakily changes the shortcuts in the File Explorer. So you might not notice it, but it can also leave the documents folder in your original home drive, and you'll end up with multiple documents folders in desktop. If you delete a file, because it's a synchronization and it's not a backup, if you delete it, it's gone. Again, recycle bin notwithstanding, you can't restore it because it really wasn't a backup. Now, what I've seen in the past is that you turn on OneDrive, Windows 11 backup, it moves everything into OneDrive. OneDrive starts writing it up to your OneDrive, the cloud, and all of a sudden you've completely blown your subscription or your free subscription to OneDrive space. And if you don't pay any attention to that, eventually they're going to turn off your OneDrive account because you haven't paid and you're using tens of gigabytes for a 5 gigabyte account. And eventually they'll delete your files. So it'd be really hard to do, but you could end up losing your data. So you need to be careful of that. And I'm not saying don't use OneDrive as a synchronization cloud service. Just don't use OneDrive as a backup. And if you turn Windows Backup on and then turn it off, it starts messing with all kinds of things. So if you do that, and I should have shared my Windows instance here. If you do that, come see us because you have to unwind from it. Michael, anything else? Well, I'm going to quit sharing for a second, and so I can bring in Windows here. But anything else that you have to add to that?
Are we talking Windows backup now or some
Yes,
other
Windows
thing?
backup. Yeah, Windows 11 backup.
Okay. Just a couple things. Number one, you can actually go in and designate what folders go to OneDrive. I don't know whether you're aware of that.
Yes, of course. And
Um,
we're going to show that. Let's see, what am I running here? This is Windows 11 Pro. Can you all see that? Is it sharing my, yeah.
and of
If
course,
I click on settings, manage backup. And this is what Michael's talking about right here. You can turn on and off which folders you want to be backed up to OneDrive. I should say synchronized to OneDrive. Go ahead, Michael.
the other thing I was going to add is, subscription services, been prominent for quite a while. And what Microsoft is doing is trying to, again, by default, set you up on OneDrive so they can collect money. Eventually you're going to go over that 5 gigabyte free space because that includes all of your Microsoft accounts.
Exactly.
The other thing I noticed, Bob, is I have turned off OneDrive on my Windows 11 as I did on my Windows 10. On Windows 11, it actually gives you a warning that it can't upload additional files because you'll exceed the storage capability.
Oh, really?
So,
I haven't
yes.
seen that. Let's.
Well, that's because I turned it off, so I get that warning. That's the only thing. I have a couple of other things later on if you have some comments.
Well, we're really talking about OneDrive. So if you got comments on OneDrive, I'd be glad. I'm sitting here looking at, so for those of you that have Windows 11, down in the lower right corners, if you can see my cursor here, click on the little cloud here. Click on the gear and settings. And this is where, over on the left here, sync and backup. If you click on manage backup, you will see the folders that are being backed up. And this is using Windows Backup. And by the way, you're duplicating what you're syncing with Windows or with OneDrive as well. So that's another irritant to me, is they're double booking your OneDrive space. If I click on the account here, and I can choose which folders I want to synchronize. And you can see here by default, and I can't undo this, desktop, documents, music, pictures. I can turn off attachments, which doesn't make any sense. So
Right.
yeah, you can right here, if I unlink this PC, your OneDrive files will stop syncing. Local files will remain on this device, while online-only files will be removed, because you can designate files to be online only. And if I unlink it, I end up with things being moved all over the place. I'm going to bring up, y'all may not be able to see this, it's pretty small. I'm using File Explorer here to look at users, Bobsky test. And you can see I've got a documents folder here, but I also have a OneDrive folder that has documents in it as well. So that's where things get confusing. Did you have something else, Michael?
Not on OneDrive.
Okay. Did you have something else then beyond that?
Well, yeah, I've just got to reinforce what you've said. You know, if you back up anything to the cloud or an external drive, you've got to encrypt that, because you just don't know whether somebody is going to go up there and get your information. So if you're leaving premises, whether that's up in the cloud or just transporting it somewhere, make sure those files are encrypted. You can also put them into a zip folder, putting multiple files into one folder and encrypt that entire folder. So that's another way of doing it. But Bob, the main thing I want to point out to you, and I do what you're calling a manual backup. And I have been talking about this for several years. There is actually an open source app that will synchronize um, folders between devices, that is compatible with Windows, Mac, as well as Linux.
Yeah,
And
free
it's called
file sync.
Free File Sync,
Yep.
and we talk about it extensively on our program on Wacky Monday. If you want me to put information about it into the chat, I will. I also have a PDF explaining how to do it. If you want me to share that, I will.
Sure, I think that'd be great. I use free file sync all the time. It's, in fact, I've sent them multiple contributions because I think it's such cool software.
Right.
And just on the side, personal opinion, if you use a free software and they ask for contributions and you're using it, you should contribute. So that's a personal thing. Yeah, I agree. Free file sync could be used to manage a manual backup. Again, though, I want to stress, so Michael put that into the chat for those of you, are you looking at the chat? I still want to stress that an automated backup is really important. I continuously forget things, and this is not something you want to forget. You'll notice when you need it that you forgot it, and that's too late. So let's look at OneDrive's cloud storage really quickly. And when your OneDrive, well, your Microsoft account comes with 5 GB of free space. This is brand new. You can't expand your OneDrive space without subscribing to a Microsoft Office 365 plan. You used to be able to just pay some extra money and get 200 gigabytes or 400 gigabytes. That's not allowed now. You have to purchase an Office 365 plan. And these are the plans that they currently support. So you get 5 gigabytes free. You don't need to have an Office. But if you need to go over the 5 gigabytes of OneDrive space, the next increment is what they call Basic, 365 Basic. It's $20 a year. It's capped at 100 gigabytes, and you get ad-free Outlook along with that. Then you can get what they call Personal, which is a terabyte of cloud storage for $100 a month. This is actually the one that I subscribe to. No, actually, I subscribe to my family here. You get a terabyte per person for up to 6 people with a family. And then there's a thing called Premium that they're really pushing. And right now you can get it for $100 a year, which is the same as this personal account, but it will renew at $200. So this is a limit, they call it a limited time offer. So these are the different levels of OneDrive storage that are available. When it comes to, and Michael, you may have some input on this as well. Microsoft dropped support for BitLocker, which was the disk encryption utility on Windows 10. Now it's only supported on Windows 11 Pro. If you have Windows 11 Home, there is no BitLocker, and you have to use third-party tools. Or you mentioned Zip, for example. You can zip with encryption to create the encrypted drive. I think that's it. Oh, yeah, we just talked about this, different kinds of backup. All right. Okay, well, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop recording. I hope I'm going to stop recording. Hi, Connie J. I see that you...
Well, friends, that's a wrap. We hope you've enjoyed this video today. Hey, before you go, if you like this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to know when the latest SCTC video comes out, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. And if you have any ideas or feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to leave a comment below. We'll see you next time.